All right, so welcome everybody to this month's training, or rather webinar, and we're going to be going through, as Rick said, we're going to be going through cases. My information here, my name is Jaskulski. I'm the Senior Technical Consultant here at CRM Dynamics. My contact information is up on the screen here, so if you do have any questions, feel free to send that off to myself, and I'll forward that off to the appropriate party if there are any particular questions. Today's topic is primarily going to be going for the basics of managing support cases. We're not necessarily going to be diving into the advanced case management, which includes items such as SLAs and articles. Those topics, because they're pretty much lengthy topics on their own, they're going to be covered in a later webinar. So those topics are going to be covered in a later webinar and not going to be covered in this webinar, but we're going to be going through the creation, assignment, management of service request cases or support cases, resolving a case, canceling and reopening, accessing the cases through queues and how to work on cases, and using the progress bar, which is a built-in component that you can customize, but we'll be going through the very simple version of that, and you can make it anything obviously in CRM as complex as you like, but we're going to be going primarily through the basic simple config to give you an idea of where and why things are. Before we get started, I'm just going to go through some very basics of a case, essentially what a case is, what it is usually used for, and some basic configuration that you're probably going to want to know or do before you start using your case entity. And so I'm going to just dive in right into the CRM. And what we're going to do is we're going to first talk about what should you be using cases for and what are cases usually used for. Now, this is just a set of guidelines. You can really use cases for a number of different purposes, but this is just a basic guideline. So cases primarily are used for working on client support, client concerns, or actions that have to be performed on a client to essentially maintain the relationship with your client. So the standard sort of support system that you call into and you get a case and somebody works on it and gives you a call back, that's the sort of process that can be used with cases, but also for other things such as RMAs, service calls, things like that can also be, cases can also be utilized for those. Now, cases, when you create cases, there are two main configurations that can be used and are useful for when performing cases that we're just going to look at right at the beginning here, is when you create a case, most organizations will give you a case number. And then most organizations will also be able to categorize your case. So what we're going to look at is we're going to look at where that is first, making sure that you have everything you need to essentially create your case. So this is actually done in the so let's go to the business management section first. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up topics. Essentially, these are referred to as subjects within CRM, and this allows you to define which sort of categories you can drop your cases into. So this is done through the settings, business management, and subject section. And here you can create and add a new subject by clicking add a new subject here, and then add an additional subject into your subject tree. This will allow anybody that's creating a case to quickly go down through the subject tree and define a particular subject that case is based on. It's not a requirement, but it is a very useful feature as it allows for very quick entry for a case. The next item that I'm just going to go through very quickly here is case numbers. Every single case is assigned a case number, and by default they can be in a format that your organization may not like. And essentially that's done in settings, administration, auto numbering. And in auto numbering there is a cases section, and here it defines the prefix of the case. The number is essentially based off of the user that you're using, so that's non-editable. And then the suffix, how many characters the suffix has. So you can lower this down to 4 or go all the way up to 6, and you can prefix this with a particular prefix such as CRMD. CRM rather, and you will see that you will have a preview there. This does affect anything going forward, so if you have created numbers in the past, just so you know, they won't be your historical numbers won't be affected. So once you have your subjects and your numbering set up, if you so decide to use it, your cases are actually located in the service module. So the service module contains all the entities and record types that are used by a typical service support team, and your cases are located under the service section of that. So if we open up the cases, by default usually the system opens up My Active Cases. By My Active Cases it means cases that are assigned to you, so cases that you've been given ownership of and you are responsible for. There are a number of other system views that are available, including active cases, cases that are open in the past 7 days, all cases, resolved cases, and so on. So all those are built in, and again you can always make your own views and customize them with anybody that's an administrator on your CRM team. So let's open up an existing case and let's go through what is inside the case here. So once when the case loads up, you will see a number of things. You will see your standard buttons up at the top. You will see by default there is a process bar within here defining which state the case is in. We'll be going through this process bar a little bit later in the webinar. And then below here you have all of your fields, including your title, which is mandatory, the case number, which is automatically generated, the subject, which is from that subject tree that we generated earlier and that we looked at, and we can define those there. The customer can be an account or a contact. It doesn't necessarily have to be an account. It could be one or the other. And if it is an account, you do have an additional field here to put in the specific contact you are to be dealing with. The case origin defines where this case originally came from. Was it an email that was sent in asking for help, a phone call, a web request, anything like that? And these origin selections actually determine the icon that is displayed in the main cases view. So if we go back to the cases view, you will see here, this one came from an email, as you can see here from the origin, this one from a phone call, and this one came from a web request. So you can easily see where these cases came from within your support queue. So let's go back in here for a second, and you'll see here there are a number of other fields, for example, complaint type and your company info. That's a quick view form, description of the problem, any recent cases this customer has had, entitlements and SLAs. They're a bit more on the advanced side, so we'll save those for the advanced webinar, but this is all available on here. Like with most CRM entities, you also have the ability to attach activities. So if you have a phone call with the customer or an email, anything like that, these can be attached, and also same with notes. Notes can be entered here. Notes can be entered here. And you can attach any files to this record as sort of historical record of what was done in this case. right? Now, so this is what a case looks like, okay? So let's just, go through the process from the very beginning of how we create a case, the different options for creating a case, and then we're going to go through the process of assigning and everything that follows that. So creating a case can be done from a few different locations. It could be done from the cases section in the CRM. It could be done from directly within the account and contact, and it can be done from an email or a phone call. It can also be done from a quick create. So I'll show you all these relatively quickly. So from within the cases entity view, you can create new case, and that will take you to a new page that has a blank case on here, and this is our webinar case. Okay, and we select a customer. So we select a customer, we can select a contact if a contact exists, and we can fill in all of the rest of that information, including the origin, where it came from, everything like that. Once we have that, we would simply save our case, and that case is created. So that's the basic way to create a case, directly from the cases section. Another way to create a case is if we just happen to be in that customer. So for example, our customer calls in, we look up their account, and we're within their account screen right here. If you have a cases subgrid, you can click the plus from the cases subgrid, or in the dark blue menu up here, you go to the related records, select case, and then click add a new case from there. Whenever you add a case from a record, such as an account or contact, you will notice that when the page comes up, it is actually pre-populated with that customer's information. So you don't actually have to enter that in. So if you have more than one national bank that you have as a customer, and then they're just called national bank, you can go to the appropriate one and create a new case from there, because it may be a little bit difficult to tell if they all have the same name. And then you fill in your information the exact same way you would from the cases section, and save that. So that's how you would do it from an account or a contact. Another way to do it is from the activity section. So for example, you may have a phone call that you have received from a particular client. You have this phone call, you realize that their question is not really so much a question, but more of an issue that they're having regarding finding a product that they're supposed to have access to. You can actually convert this using the Convert To button into a case. So if you click that, what it will do is, let me just quickly fill that in. You do have to have all the required fields filled in on the case here, so we're just going to fill that in and save it. And if we can convert that to a case, once everything is filled in, we can actually define the subject. So we can pick our subject. So this is a product problem, and it is a software bug. We're going to open a new case, yes. And then change the task to completed and close the form. No, we don't want it completed, so we're just going to click convert, and it is going to create a case for us automatically in regards to that customer with the appropriate subject. The title comes in from the title of the activity, and we have all of the information already prepared for us in the case. So that's a very nice and quick way to convert to a case if you receive an email or a phone call in your CRM, and the activity record is already there. The last and final way that you primarily would create cases is what's known as the quick create. So a quick create can actually be performed from the plus icon in the top of your screen in the dark blue menu. If you click that, you will have an option of creating a new record, and as long as you have permission to do so, you can just click the case from there, and be able to create that from there. In our particular example, I don't have permission to do a quick create on this, so that's why it's missing. So not everybody will have the same permission. So if it's missing from your menu, you do not have permission to do so. So making sure that if a person is responsible for cases, they don't see cases here, that means they don't have the permission to see them. Okay, so we have our case that we've now created. We're going to use this example here that we've created from our activity. We've figured out that it is a software bug, and now what do we do with it? Well, what we do with it now is we have to assign it to somebody for it to be worked on. If I'm working on it, great. If I'm the one that created it, it's automatically assigned to me, but I'm usually not the person responsible for software bugs. You can simply perform an assigning of a case to a particular individual by clicking the Assign button. The Assign button is available from both the grid and the actual record itself. By default, the Assign menu says Assign to me, but I'm going to change that to User or Team. It's already assigned to me. I want to throw this case off to the appropriate department, make sure they work on it as quickly as possible. Here, we can search for a number of individuals. I'm going to choose Angelina here. So Angelina is going to work on the software bug for me, and I'm going to click Assign. Okay, I have a little bit of a pop-up blocker here, so I'm just going to click Always Allow here. And I'm just going to refresh my my screen on my cases section. So once I go to my cases, okay, I'll see that my case is no longer there. And if I go to active cases, we have a number of cases. And again, sorting and filtering happens the exact same way as with any other entity. So there's our case here. It's assigned to Angelina. So now Angelina can go ahead and work on it. So in terms of people working on cases, there are a number of ways to do that. One of them is assigning it. But what if I want to put this in an area where a number of people can see it? So if we have a team, you can assign it to a team rather than a user. So you can select a team that's already configured by your administrator and assign it that way. Another way to do it is to actually assign it to a queue. So your administrator can set up queues, which are essentially lists of activities or tasks, and group a number of individuals into that queue. We're not going to be diving in on how to create and manage queues, but we are going to look at how to add a particular case to a queue. So here we have the case that we just assigned to Angelina, and now we want to drop it into a queue. There's a simple Add to Queue button there, and then what you would do is you would select it to an appropriate queue. So you know what, we've realized that we thought it was a software bug. It's actually not a software bug. It's actually incorrect information in our billing system. So we're going to add that to our billing queue. And that now moved the case into the queue. It doesn't disappear from active cases. It's still there. It just adds a record into a queue, allows us to look at it. And queues are accessed also from the service menu, and they're available just below cases here. Again, your menu order and your availability might be a little bit different depending on the customizations you have. And here we have the case that I've just added to this queue. So I'm a member of the support queue that I've added this to, and it allows me to now see the case. Even though it's not assigned to me, I'm a member of this queue, so it is visible to me. Now, there are, if you would like to pick the item, so if you pick this item, that will put your user into the work by field. So I'm just going to pick that item. And do you want to also remove the item from the queue? I don't want to remove it from the queue right now because I want to show an additional feature here. So now it's being worked on by me. I can ask somebody else to work on it, and then they can pick it, and then it'll say it's being worked on by them. This allows you to define who's working on what so that multiple people don't accidentally pick up the same item and try to work on the same item at the same time. Allows individuals to pick and use them appropriately without bumping into one another and just causing more work. Okay. The other item is the release item. Okay. Release means once you've picked it, you can say I'm not working on this anymore, and you can release this item. So I'm making it available for other people to work on. So now it's not being worked on anybody anymore. So I've released that back out because I realized, hey, I don't have the expertise on this. I'm going to let this case go, and I'm going to ask somebody else to work on it. Okay. The last item here is I'm done working on this. The case is resolved, for example, or this case shouldn't be in this queue. I can remove this from the queue by simply clicking the remove button, and that will remove that from the queue. Resolved cases do get removed from the queue, but if you need to remove that, you can do so as well. Okay, so that is essentially how you assign and sort of define who the case should go to and how it should flow. Okay, let's go back to our cases. I'm going to pick the same case that we had previously, which is the one that we created, and we are going to look at updating cases. So updating cases can be done in a few different areas. Obviously, there are the main fields that you can update. There are also the activities you can add by simply saying, you know what, I've just had a phone call with this client. I called and left a voicemail. You can even check off left voicemail and click OK, and that adds it to the activities, and then we have a record of that activity. We can update the description, we can add notes, and so on and so forth. There are also ways to update it from the process bar. Okay, in regards to the process bar, it essentially has some fields predefined for you that you fill in, and it'll sort of guide you along the process. I am speaking and touching on the process bar right now because it's involved in a few different areas. Although it's our last topic, we are going to touch on it a few times because it is integrated into a few spots. So here you have your particular fields, and you can fill in the fields there and move on to the next stage within your process bar, and it will guide you through the information as long as it's configured for your particular process. If there will be some configuration involved, this is a type of process, so it's related to workflows and dialogues, and that topic of how to customize this will be covered on a later webinar as well. But just so you are aware, it is fully customizable. Anybody that has customizer rights will be able to change what fields are displayed, what's required, and things like that within these individual stages. Even add or remove stages, that's possible as well. So we're updating this case, we're filling in all the information, we found out what we need from the client, and we're pretty much close to a resolution at this point. How do we get to the end stage of this case? How do we close this case and remove it from our essentially our to-do list? There are a number of ways of closing a case. One way is by simply clicking the Resolve Case button. So if you click the Resolve Case button, you have to confirm that you would like to resolve the case, and you will receive a Resolve Case dialog come up, okay, which asks you essentially information about how was this case resolved, so it can track it and store it, and allows you the ability to report against it as well. So here we actually resolve the problem. We could add different resolution types. That's again a customization feature that can be added in through your customizations. We've resolved the problem. Our resolution was we fixed an accounting error with an accounting system. If you do track time for your cases, you can specify that this took us 30 minutes to resolve, and remarks it was a and we said it was a data entry issue. Somebody, when they entered in their account information, didn't enter it correctly, and that caused a bug in the system. We just had to fix that information, and we're done. Once you click resolve, what this will do is this will make the current case that we're on inactive, so closed, resolved, and it will add a small activity record to the case that contains this information. This will allow you to track what happened when the case is closed. So if we resolve this, give it a second, and here we have our case resolution here. Okay, so that is our case resolution that we've resolved. And if you see at the bottom here, our case is listed as resolved, and this form is no longer editable. Resolved cases cannot be edited. Okay. Now, we're going to show you another way to resolve this record, but what we're going to do first is we're going to reopen this case. We realize this customer is still having an issue. We need to continue working on this case. So rather than creating a new case and trying to copy all this information that we've done from the past, we can reactivate this case. The client calls back, they give us the case number, we look up the case, we reopen the case. Okay. So we click reactivate case up at the top. We're going to get a confirmation to reactivate. We click reactivate. The case is back to being active or open. Okay. Now we're going to continue troubleshooting. We're filling our appropriate information, and now we're going to resolve the case. This time we're going to resolve the record a little bit differently. We're going to use and follow the process bar. So here we have our process bar here. We're going to fill in the information on each stage. We're going to click next stage as we go through, and our last stage here is resolve the case. We can mark the case as resolved, and by simply using the process bar, we essentially get to the same spot. The same type of case resolution screen, problem solved, error, additional information needed, and then we'll put 15 minutes, for example, and we'll click resolve the case. And this will resolve the case the same way as the resolve case button happens. The nice thing about it is it keeps the history of your case resolutions. So if you've had to close and reopen a case multiple times, you'll be able to track and see, okay, well, we closed it twice before. What did we do those previous 2 times, and why didn't we do the final bit of changes that we needed to resolve this case, or those final steps? So you can actually go through and analyze your cases to figure out why weren't these cases resolved the first time around, what was done versus what should have been done. That's a useful part of that case resolution that allows you to track that information. Okay. Now, let's go back to cases here, and we'll grab another case. So this other case here, we're going to have a faulty product catalog here. So within the sample case that we have here, what we're going to do is we've opened up this case. Somebody created it and sent it off to our team. This customer calls back and specifies that, you know what, this case shouldn't have been created. We accidentally made a mistake. It's on our side. It's not a problem. It's a clerical error on our side. We said, okay, you know what, that's not a problem. We can cancel this case. Because sometimes you want to track the difference between a case that you actually worked on and fixed and a case that's a case that was either accidentally created or not a valid case, you can simply cancel a case. We usually don't recommend deleting cases. You lose the history of how many times this happens, how many accidental or incorrect cases are created. So we usually prefer to use the cancel. And by simply canceling the case, you would set the status as canceled, or if it was merged into a different case, you can set it as merged. Here we're going to mark it as canceled. We're going to confirm. And at the bottom here, it is now listed as canceled instead of resolved. Also read-only, also you can't edit anymore. It's still reactivated like you would in another case, but it just has a different status. Allows you to go through your reporting and differentiate between the multiple types of cases. Okay. Now we've gone through the next topic actually already, which is the service queue, which is adding a case to a queue, picking a case, and removing a case. We sort of did that in the assign cases portion, so we've covered that topic. But now what we're going to do is go through a little bit more detail on the progress bar. The progress bar here, as I mentioned, allows you within your organization to actually guide and direct your support team through specific steps. So for example, as a bare minimum, you want them to fill in A, B, and C within your case. You can define those as the first step. You have to fill this in before you go to the next step. You can make those fields mandatory and then have them click the next step. You can define things like they have to find the appropriate product that's associated with, or an article that it's associated with, or create an article, or make the actual phone call, make certain activities required. And those can all be configured inside the process bar. And that just helps to guide the process. It helps to make everything uniform and make sure that everybody is following the same guidelines as are defined within your organization for assisting customers. It could be fully customized with a number of steps. You can add and remove fields, and if your organization doesn't feel this benefits you, you can also remove it. Okay, it can be deactivated. The only thing to note for process bars is if you have started to use a process bar and you deactivate it, it will still remain present on the records that originally had it. It'll just give you a notification that that process bar has been deactivated. Again, we're not going to go through the details of how to configure it and update these process bars, because that's pretty much a topic on its own that we could just spend an entire webinar session on. So that will be covered at in a different webinar. But you can configure all of that information. You can also have multiple process bars. By multiple, I mean different process bars for different types of cases by simply clicking the edit edit process, so you can actually switch to a different process if there is one available. You cannot have more than one at a time on a case. So you can switch from one to another. So if you have a product support process and then you have a service support process, you can have your users flip to a different process bar if needed. And again, we'll be covering that in more detail at a later webinar. Okay, so that's pretty much the basics of cases. So there's not much more to the core of the cases other than summarizing everything that the case has. And the nice thing is that Microsoft by default has the dashboard section here, so we can go to the dashboard section, and within the dashboard section there are a number of built-in dashboards, charts, and views to help you manage your support cases, and that includes the number of cases by agent, SLA statuses. Again, SLAs we would be covering at a later webinar. Case mix, so the priority of the cases, and there are a number of built-in dashboards here. We're just going to go into the service performance dashboard now, and we're going to wait for that to join here. Okay, and then there's service leaderboard, how many cases were resolved by a particular rep, case resolutions, articles and things like that. Articles are used to determine what information is needed to resolve a case, and again, that will also be covered at a later webinar for advanced case management. All right, so These are all dashboards. Again, dashboards are all customizable. If you need to create a custom view, you can create custom charts, views, everything like that. And this just defines the basics and the sort of common views that customers have asked for that Microsoft has included. And you can use that just to guide and review your service process. All right. So that is pretty much it for the topics of basics of cases and managing the basics of cases. So at this point, I will open it up to some questions if anybody has any questions specifically on the topics that we've covered.